And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone, the Rhode Island man of fame. Joe DeLeone, good evening, good sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Came back. You mentioned my Rhode Island ties. I was at Rhode Island homecoming this past weekend, which was pretty cool. Got a big, nice welcome from the athletic department. They had us on the pregame show, Sean and I, me and my roommate, which was pretty fun. But we're not here to talk about that. Blake, this is such a critical week in college football for what happened yesterday. Not a lot of crazy upsets like we've been getting, but I think that today is a very underrated conversation for how the playoff is going to be shaping up.
Week 9 was a separation Saturday, regardless if anybody wants to talk about it, but it also puts a lot more into perspective. You know, the league game that we'll talk about here tonight, LSU and A&M. A&M dominates in the second half and beats LSU, while LSU can't capitalize on very big mistakes, or just capitalize in general, I guess. The next two game, or the next really biggest game in the SEC from a playoff eliminator standpoint, LSU and Alabama will face off in 2 weeks. So we're starting to get a little bit more of a picture. So now LSU, Ole Miss, both have 2 losses inside the conference. The SEC a little bit beaten up on itself right now, Joe. But in that same token, Texas A&M, I'm going to go ahead and say it, with Marcel Reed, a real contender. Whether you want to like it or not, they are a real contender.
I have a really interesting take when we talk about Texas A&M and what it means for them going forward. Marcel Reed, to me, provides Texas A&M with just a really unique offensive approach that not many other teams can.
You mean like deploy. With Colin Klein and Avery Johnson last year, and him finally getting to the quarterback that he really wants, and then they put in Wigman because of donor type of stuff, and they just say, hey, you know what? That happened. I'm telling you it happened. So now all of a sudden here comes Marcel Reed, and the kid is electric. Boogie, woogie, woogie. And I am talking about the song.
It's a little bit more complicated and deeper than that. I think that they have an ability to use both of them. And I know that I have been anti the 2-quarterback system. I'll save that debate for when we get to it. But I think that there could be a unique opportunity for them to cause problems for opposing defenses. But I agree with you. I think Texas A&M proved that they have the defense. They have the offensive line, which are the 2 most important things that you need to be in contention to win a conference and to make it to the playoff. I don't think that they win the SEC, because we all know on this show that we're big believers in Georgia. But them getting to the playoff seems like a realistic shot, even though for some reason all these playoff predictor machines and algorithms only give them about like a 34% chance is what I was reading today.
Well, Joe, I mean, here's the thing. They're going to have to lose 2 games down this very favorable stretch to not be in Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, you can characterize as Texas being one, okay? But, I mean, Joe, we're going to talk about that game too. Texas and Vandy again on the brink of upsetting another top 5 opponent, but Texas is able to hold on. So we'll talk about that, but we'll get to LSU and A&M in a little bit. Joe, another game. Brother, I think that these comms and helmets are screwing some quarterbacks up. I fully believe it's because I keep looking at Howard. I look at Raiola's second-guessing everything he's doing in the second half. But Ohio State hangs on, man. They hang on, and they beat Nebraska. We'll get to that too. Oregon absolutely blows out Illinois, which let me stop right there for just a moment. To the great people who run the media accounts over at Oregon, I got a little bit of a beef to get with you. You clipped something from the show, which we love, which, by the way, just going to throw this out there. Joe, you and I last week both picked Oregon to absolutely dominate Illinois, and yet they put on their social media something from us out of context. So, Oregon media, or what do you call them? I guess Oregon.
So it's the social media department.
Yeah, the social media
creative services for
Here's
the football
you need
team.
to do. Because last year I was the only person that believed in you. Why didn't you use anything then? oh, that's interesting. But Oregon, Joe, I'm just going to, I'm a little pissed off. I'm going to throw it out there. I'm a little pissed off. So, again, you can say what you want, do what you want, but here's the real thing. Thank you for watching the show.
So to elaborate a little bit more on what you're talking about here, Blake, they did their hype video. We've appeared in a couple other hype videos. This is the first time that we've done a preview, spent the whole preview hyping up why a team was going to kick the crap out of their opponent, and then spend a minute talking about, like, well, if said opponent happened to play well, this is what would happen. That a team pulled the 1 minute in order to fit some narrative that they were trying to build. And I get it. I don't think anyone out there was picking Illinois to win the game. And whoever put this together was probably like, oh, I need something to make it look like people are second guessing Oregon. If you have to manufacture it that much, maybe it means you shouldn't put that as the tone of your hype video. Don't take our shit out of context. We love it when people use our stuff. Texas Tech, when they did it, was freaking awesome. It's cool that we're a part of the college football landscape, so much so that big programs like this, the number one team in the country, wants to use quotes from our show. But holy shit, have a little bit of ethical approach when it comes to these things. It's extremely unfair for you to do that to us, especially we got people tagging us saying like that we're talking shit when we weren't.
No, you saw I was sending the link to him. I put the link underneath there and said, can you find me where this and what the context? You know what the question was that I asked you? I went back and listened to it. You know what the question I asked you was? Joe, if there's a path for Illinois to win, what is it?
Which is what we do in every single preview.
Which is what we do in every single preview. But we will talk about the blowout that happened between Oregon and Illinois. Look, I'm going to say this. Nobody's going to give it credence or credit. Notre Dame absolutely destroyed Navy, and everybody's going to poo-poo on that, and I understand why. There's a deeper meaning in that. The score doesn't indicate it does indicate the 6 turnovers, but people are just going to say that it's just Navy. Not me, not I.
Blake, are you going to give Notre Dame credit on this show today? Yeah. I'm proud of you.
Are you really coming in here and acting like I've never given Notre Dame credit? Now, here's what
I was fully ready for us to yell at each other. That's all I'm saying. I was fully ready for us to yell at each other.
You never give LSU credit on anything.
I give LSU credit all the time when they earn it. They haven't earned it this year.
Wear an LSU hat during the entire summer?
That was a very but when I was wrong all of last year, I changed my tune and I gave LSU credit. I 1000% did. And I tried to give you guys credit this week, and now I have a lot of listeners asking me to no longer pick LSU when we do our previews because I am bad luck.
It's your fault.
I'll pick Alabama. Maybe it'll help.
Please, God, do. Maybe somebody will. Speaking of Bama, we'll talk about them too. I mean, Joe, the narrative coming out about Bama right now is baffling to me. Baffling.
How so?
They dominated Missouri.
Yeah, I don't know if that's really fair to do, and I'm not so certain that anyone watched those games, or that game rather, if they think that was the case, because they took advantage of a team that was playing Drew Pine. Am I supposed to be it was a good win, but they started slow and they were sloppy, and if they were going up against a team with a pulse, it would have been much closer. They keep starting slow. They keep having stupid penalties. They keep having bad blocking, missed assignments. This team's still a mess. That score is not indicative of how they played.
Want to know what Bama did offensively in their first 6 drives when the quarterback was injured and Brady Cook and they couldn't move the football? Are you ready? Field goal, 3 and out, punt, field goal, 3 and out, touchdown.
Yeah, and that's not good play. That's bad. They needed to be gifted an opportunity to kick the crap out of Missouri the way that they were.
The question now becomes, how do they respond in a bye week? I think them and LSU, how do they respond going in that game in 2 weeks? So we'll talk about Bama. Yeah. What does it mean for Mizzou, man? I mean, their defense did hold Bama down for a half, and then the door was broke in. There's a couple other teams, Joe, that we got to talk about in week 9. We're going to spend some time on. Deion Sanders in Colorado going to make the playoffs?
I think that there's a very realistic shot.
There's
I
a very realistic shot. And here's
well,
the thing.
but here's the one thing that's going to make it tricky for them is that Kansas State has the head-to-head. So that's the one thing that might box them out of it.
They can rematch. They can get back there.
They could, but that does require a little bit of extra assistance. It's me not saying that they're not good enough to. It's because of Iowa State and BYU, you would need for one of them to lose, or for both. Actually, you would need for both of them to lose. I don't know what the current tiebreaker situation is off the top of our heads for us to provide that context, but they're playing good enough to be in the top 5, top 4 conversation that by the final week, if some crazy stuff does happen, that they can slide their way in. I just don't think that 2 Big 12 teams get into the playoff, though. I don't think that's going to happen.
I think they're, because of how chaotic the Big 12 is, I think that there is going to be some chaos. I think that they're going to play if they continue to win. It's not overreact. We'll see.
I know. Okay. I get it.
Penn State without Drew Aller in the second half doesn't matter. They roll. Indiana also with a backup quarterback, Joe. They roll. And we will talk about them. We do have a $20 super chat in here from Marshall. We don't normally get $20 super chats on this show. Thank you, Marshall. He says, as good as it was for A&M to win yesterday, South Carolina is a massive trap game for them now. Joe, listen, here's the thing. I'm going to throw this out there. You don't agree with my take about South Carolina, I don't think. Okay? However, I can see where South Carolina's front seven is not like LSU's. They're better than LSU's. They're better than Florida's. They're better than Arkansas's. I can see a world where that secondary with Kilgore and that company, if Marcel Reed is going to be the guy, we'll talk about that with A&M.
Yeah,
they can give him problems. Like, let's not act as if that this isn't. I like A&M. I think they're going to win the game. However, I'm just saying, records don't indicate who you are. And that front seven has shown, regardless of who it is at this point, that they'll go toe-to-toe with you and knock you in the mouth. It's their offense that has issues. So we can get to that. But I agree with Marshall. Like, hey, man, there comes a part where I don't care if they're 4 like 5-3 or 3-5. I know what my eyeballs are seeing on that field defensively from them.
I think by the definition of the question, yes, it could be a trap game. Do I think it will be an upset? No. And I think for what you just discussed there, the defensive line for South Carolina is very good. If you are not on your P's and Q's, you're not playing good, just strong blocking performance in that game. You're going to give up for
game at night in that stadium.
You're going to give up pressures. You're going to have turnovers because they get after the quarterback and they can run the ball effectively. But I still stand by that offensive line for South Carolina is awful. It's one of the worst in the country. It's not just one of the worst.
Going up against a really good D-line.
Right. That defensive line for Texas A&M that got home against LSU, which was unexpected. They only got 2 sacks, but they still were able to produce pressures on Nussmeier in that game. They're going to kick the shit out of that South Carolina offense. It did come in the
final drive. I just want to throw that out there. I mean,
well, they were getting pressure. They were not getting.
They got 3 pressures and 2 sacks. I mean, there was 56 dropbacks in the game. 53 of them, the pocket was clean.
So it's self-induced. A lot of it was self-induced.
Very self-induced.
I'm not disagreeing with that.
So again, anyway, let's get to it. Thank you, Marshall, for the super chat. Everybody do us a favor, especially you Oregon social media crowd. Hit that like, hit that share to all those groups. Oh, I'm going to be petty as hell for a week as you minimum. Should be. Very petty. Also, if you're on YouTube, like, subscribe, notification bell wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Joe, let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. We come back, break down Week 9 games next. Stay with us. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. Joe, let me just ask you a very quick question. Is this the worst year in college football for quarterback play, in your opinion?
Yes, without a doubt. And that was a big talking point coming into the year just from the quarterback realm, from the draft perspective of was there enough good talent? And then a lot of people thought a lot of underdeveloped talent. There's not a lot of high upside guys outside of Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. 1,000% is a down year, to the point where the guys that we've been the most impressed by, let's think about that for a second. Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagway, all of these true freshmen have been the one garnering the most attention. So 100%, this is one of the worst years for quarterback play. It's been a great year for defense. It's been a great year for young guys as well.
LSU and Texas A&M, a really good matchup. A&M wins 38-23 over the Tigers. Joe, at this point, I put out a lot of content about this, so I haven't heard your thoughts about it yet. I'm very intrigued to hear what you thought about the game. Your thoughts of A&M's win over LSU.
First of all, to talk about the quarterback situation, because I think that this is the biggest catalyst for what Texas A&M's success this year overall has been. I think that Marcel Reed does need to be the lead guy going forward. I have been very anti two-quarterback system, but I've pointed out that there are certain exceptions in certain situations, Blake, that work. I think that Saturday's performance paints a potential situation where going forward, Texas A&M can ride the hot hand. If they open a game with somebody and it's not working, they can switch to Weigman or switch back to Marcel Reed. You can ride whichever play style is working best for you. And the reason why in this circumstance, Blake, and I think that this is going to create serious headaches if they try to do it this way, and I've mentioned this before, if you do your game plan, and LSU defenders even talked about this after the game, if you do your game plan for one quarterback and a guy who plays a completely different type of game steps into the game, it is impossible to make mid-game adjustments to prepare for it. But outside of that, this Texas A&M running game, it's phenomenal. This offensive line is paving some serious paths that are helping them run over any defense that they're going up against. And I think that defensive front for Mike Elko, he is a great defensive mind to the point where we're seeing that this team is getting better on a week-to-week basis. They're smothering, they're confusing, they're causing problems for every single quarterback that they've gone up against. This Texas A&M team, as we said in the open, Blake, they are worthy of a playoff spot. If they finish the year strong, they're going to be one of the SEC teams that get in.
3 weeks ago, I said this last night. I said it on the guy's show. I went on his postgame show last night. But 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, whatever the Florida game was, okay, I came out and I was asked a question about who are some of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. My response was Marcel Reed, because I saw Florida. And listen, I think that there's a difference. Actually, I think that there's a different style of quarterback that's coming up than what we're now normally used to. In the reference to, Joe, you see a Caleb Williams, a guy that's mobile and can move and can really throw the ball. Jaden Daniels is another. J.J. McCarthy. Name the guys, Joe, that are coming out that are having these types of success. It's multiple dual threat guys. No longer are there days of guys just sitting back in the pocket not being able to run. I think Marcel Reed is just an outright playmaker, Joe. And I get what you're saying about Connor Wigman. But we talked about last week in reference to him, he should have had 5 interceptions against Mississippi State. He had a very bad half against LSU. It's not as if that Connor Wigman was playing good football. It's just that nobody was entertained by A&M and Mississippi State because of how bad State is. It's not on everybody's radar and antenna during a big week. So the bottom line is that Marcel Reed probably gives you, because of the offensive play caller that you have, CC Kansas State with Avery Johnson. Joe, this is the exact same thing that happened at Kansas State last year with Will Howard, is it not? I mean,
yes. That's a very good point to bring up.
It's damn near identical of what is happening here. So even in that point, I do believe and agree that the highest upside right now, it would appear that it's Marcel Reed. To your point in reference to the game of why we bring that up. So Marcel Reed, Garrett Nussmeier has a bad turnover. Obviously, Marcel Reed comes in, first play, touchdown, bang, 31 unanswered points, or 31 unanswered points. You got an LSU defense that's reeling, but here's the thing. There are some things, Joe, when I go back and watch it today that I think LSU did help him out with. They're out of assignment. They're not sound correct. They're not fundamentally sound on some things. And I do think that helped Marcel Reed. Now the question, a lot like Avery Johnson a year ago for A&M, who, Joe, we can look at the game, and we can. Where do they go from here as an offense? They're physical at the line of scrimmage. They'll run the football down your throat. But now they have a playmaker at quarterback. Joe, they literally in the second half just out physical LSU and outplayed them. I mean, one team made mental mistakes. The other was ready to pounce on those mental mistakes. Let's not act like this isn't a tale of two halves here. LSU dominates the first half, and then A&M dominates more in the second half to win this football game. So I look at this and say, I still think that you have two even teams in a lot of degrees, but one kind of got away from them in the other, right? Like at the end, Elko started pounding that ass at the end. Joe, A&M is a tough, physical, well-coached football team that's got dudes. They got playmakers and dudes all over the place. The question now becomes if you have a team like South Carolina that you'll see next week that can stop the run at will better. I mean, South Carolina's front seven is nothing to sneeze about, okay, at all. They're one of the best. Joe, now comes the part if Marcel Reed gets back into an Arkansas situation where he's got to throw the football around a little bit, how do they play there? Now, they're winning.
But that brings up the conversation point and why is it Wigman? I keep getting corrected by folks.
They want you to say Wigman.
Wigman. That kind of brings up what I brought up with Wigman, where if that does happen, first half, Marcel Reed, they're doing a really good job of playing the run because they actually have the bodies to do so. You flip the switch, you bring Wigman in for a couple of series, and you start to see if you can take some of those shots if the game is close, and then you let him finish the football game. That's what I'm trying to say here, and I'm not saying that like one guy can't be better than the other. They have one of the few times where this system can work. And we've seen them do it. We saw them do it against Mizzou. We saw them do it against Florida. We're bringing up examples here where both guys have played really good. Or it's so linear as it has to be one guy or the other.
John,
it doesn't have to be.
I'm going to pause here with you. I understand and agree with what you're saying, but you got to let Marcel Reed cook here for a minute.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Start him next game. And then if they're doing a really good job of playing against him, bring in Wigman and start taking some shots.
I guess. In reference to the game, let's talk about that. So LSU dominates the first half. They're unable to execute on certain things. The field goal, special teams, yet another blunder when we talk about special teams. Missed 2 field goals. Joe, ironically, they were the one dominating physically, okay, in the first half defensively. They get a turnover. They get a turnover on downs. They're really making some things happen here. Wigman is 6 of 18 through a half in a series. So A&M comes back, and we talked about Marcel Reed. Look, they did nothing special to me, A&M. When you go back and watch it, it's zone read principles, Joe. It's an inverted veer with a guard pull. I mean, that it is what it is. I mean, that's what they ran, and LSU wasn't prepared for it, nor did they stop it. So now, for me at least, you just got to look at A&M and say, listen, now everybody knows what you can do and what you're capable of. So now teams are going to game plan for it. The question now becomes, too, and talking about the game, Joe, it wasn't just one side of the football. I mean, they forced Garrett Nussmeier into 3 interceptions. Now, they got beat on a lot of stuff, but they held him to those interceptions. They got to him and just mentally. So I look at this and say, too, when I look at the game, one team just overwhelmed the other when it mattered the most.
There's 2 things here with LSU that stand out to me. One, I think that Joe Sloan, it's kind of been proven here that he should not be the play caller. I really don't think that he should. I think that how quickly they abandon running the football when you have a really good offensive line If you can't figure out how to get this run game going with a great running back in Caden Durham and all of these NFL offensive linemen, that is an indictment on your decision-making as a play caller. Nussmeier's performance, albeit I have been one of the few people that don't think that he is as good as everyone has propped him up to be. He is a box score champion, the Daniel Jones-ish of the SEC, where he'll put up some really good stats and he's got some pretty good traits, but the decision-making's not there. That got accentuated because they threw the ball as much as they did. You weren't trailing early. You were up. You have this opportunity in this position
to lean on them.
To lean on the run game and open up the run game and be creative. I don't get it with Sloan why they cannot figure out how to get things going. This is not a situation like other teams that we've discussed. Like Oklahoma is an example that we talked about where I've said they need to try to run the football, and then we've come to the conclusion that they can't because they don't have the offensive line to do it.
Well, then they line up against Ole Miss this week and run the football, and they're up at half.
Right.
So, look, you're 100% spot on, but continue. I'm sorry.
The other point that I have, and I have to be a dick, man. I have to. This comes to fruition of what I have talked about with Brian Kelly Blake.
Here it comes.
He is the king of winning football games against the teams that he's supposed to beat. Arkansas, beating Ole Miss at home. But when it comes to any situation, and as a Notre Dame fan, and watching this so often, and knowing what he does when it comes to these spots where the games that they're not expected to win or are the real, truly difficult situations for them to step into, he falters. He falters. USC got tough. They faltered. Texas A&M got tough. He faltered. I don't know what the full scope of this is and what this means for the future of LSU. But I find it very troubling that a lot of those same issues in big games that he had when he was at Notre Dame continue to come up now at LSU. And we get more and more proof of it.
I'm going to hold off on that. I'm going to hold off on what you said about that, because I want to come in here in 2 weeks just in case and be like, told you so, bitch.
But wait. But actually, I would argue, though, that that's a game that they should win. They're at home against a Bama team with a first-year head coach that's been inconsistent. That's one of those.
They're not going to be favored. But
yes,
they're not.
They will be.
No, they will not be.
You and I both know that they should be, though.
Want to bet?
The books have not been good this year, by the way. The sports books have not been good with a lot of their lines. They don't know who's supposed to be favored or not.
Yeah, transfer portal is really getting to them too. So this has been a wacky year. If you're making by the way, I bet all of our picks this week straight up and won. I lost one game. You ready? The one that I lost to you by. So now you've put it down to a score. Here's the thing for me with LSU. There's a lot of content that I have out there. Here's what I'm going to say. You cannot turn the football over. Joe, it's the bottom line. Why I've had to fight for that on and covering LSU. The reason I don't blows my mind. Okay. But Joe, momentum is a massive thing. And Garrett Nussmeier has had 7 interceptions in the last month. Joe, there could have been a situation where he should have more than that. He's too turnover prone. I would rather the Connor Wigman approach in reference to, hey, man, I would rather a quarterback not take the shot than take the shot and make a boneheaded decision and get picked. Because when you don't turn the football over, you give at least your defense a chance.
Well, I feel like the biggest problem, not to cut you off, but I feel like his biggest problem is that he doesn't handle pressure well. Like he doesn't, the throws that he had in this game, the last 2 that he had where he rolls out and he kind of just chucks it cross body off kilter into a 50-50 ball situation where his guy doesn't even have the best angle. And then the second one, the pocket's collapsing and then he gets picked off by, it was a linebacker or a DB that just baited him into dumping it off.
He check down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah. I mean, you got to start there. Like, I don't think LSU defensively, look, they got shell-shocked by Marcel Reed. Great players make great plays. You got shell-shocked. It was what it was, okay? But it doesn't mean that you got to turn the football over the way that you did and do some things that you were doing. Like, if you're going to lose, make Marcel Reed go 85 yards on you and play field position. See what happens. But you don't have that ability when you turn the ball over. Joe, they had 2 turnovers on downs. They had 4 total turnovers with 3 interceptions, including that, and a missed field goal that led to a fumble and a turnover on downs. They missed 2 field goals. It is the equivalent of you having 6 turnovers. It is that equivalent. And here's the thing. If you're LSU, people are going to kill me for saying this. And yet until the end of that game, when they got the last touchdown, Joe, you were within 5 points of that game. 3 minutes left to go. It's a 5-point game. And then you throw a pick. So the turnover-worthy plays or the turnover-worthy situations, it's not over for you. I mean, you got a doable, that's what she said, schedule, okay, down the stretch. What are you going to do with it? And you know what, Joe? Here's what I'll say to your Brian Kelly thought and analogy. You're right. Go prove it. Go prove it. Go prove it. That's all I'd say on that. So, it is what it is on that. A&M's a contender, man. They're a scary team. They're rolling. Mike Elko has really made them a physical football team, man.
Before we close out this segment and we move on to the next one, for all of the buffoons who said that Mike Elko should not have been the head coach, learn ball. Please, learn ball. There were a lot of people that didn't like this Elko hire. We were 2 of the few that came on here and said, Elko is not only going to be a good hire, it's going to be a great hire. We talked about how it raised the floor.
Dude, we got shit
for that. We got shit for that.
We got massive shit for praising the Elko hire.
All I'm just trying to say here and reiterate is that he is just such a good pure ball coach. He's one of those guys that just fit the tough, hard-nosed, going to push his guys and show up and set the tone. And that's what's happening year 1.
That's going to be a scary place if he keeps producing like this now. They ain't a place to play around with. They're not. So you can think, hey, they're goofy and weird and do weird shit, and their cheerleaders eat grass off a field. That shit doesn't matter when that ball's kicked off. That shit doesn't matter. So it's good for fans. It has nothing goes into the game with it. By the way, Mike Elko, I heard your post-game press conference. Jimbo. Anyway, Ohio State survives, Joe, beating Nebraska 21-17. Your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I think that one thing is starting to become a bit apparent, and it's one of the worst things that happens to championship caliber teams that we expect to go on these runs at the beginning of the year. Injuries are starting to kill them, and it sucks. The injuries that they're dealing with on their offensive line is really starting to pull them back, because we have spent so much time praising this team and how they are gifted in so many spots and they have depth at so many positions. The only spot, like even at quarterback, they have depth, which is crazy to think that they're 3-4 deep, that they could roll different guys in there that would work in that system. But the one position, Blake, that they're not deep at the current moment because they lost 2 left tackles in their past few games is their offensive line. So they're playing musical chairs here. They're trying to figure out what to go with and what direction to go in order to have just an offensive line that's survivable. This game, they gave up 7 tackles for loss, 7 yards per rush, 0.7 yards per rush before contact, which is abysmal, and 6 pressures on Will Howard. I'm not going to completely freak out at the current moment, but I think as they approach the playoff, and if they do reach that spot where they have to play a Texas A&M, a Georgia, if they have to play Oregon again, I don't know if their offensive line is going to be able to survive a battle like that, because Nebraska got smoked by Indiana last week and they played you close because your offensive line's banged up. I hope there's a solution. I hope they can figure it out, but it's looking a little bit dire for what could happen in these coming games.
Well, Joe, looking at the game, though, the turnovers, regardless of if you're talking about offensive line or not, Will Howard still went 13 of 16 and went off. So if you're Chip, if you're Ryan Day, you got to say, listen, man, we are beating them to death through the air. Okay? And the problem that I had in the game in watching this was I'm like, look, I get it. He's got to run a little bit. But Jeremiah Smith is down there. And, Joe, they did that in the second half to come back, but that's how they were moving their offense. The run game is where things are getting really affected. Okay? When you have Juckins, 10 carries, 29 yards, Henderson, 10 carries, 25 yards, Joe. I mean, that's where they're being affected. Yeah. So you found a way, right? I mean, you found a way. Your defense came up big late against Joe. I mean, Raiola's not a freshman quarterback anymore, really. I mean, we're more than halfway through the season. This kid's been through a lot. But your defense gets the turnover on downs from Nebraska, 4 plays, 6 yards. Okay, you get the interception late. So you're coming back into the football game. Nebraska does take the lead late, but you battle back. Joe, the drive when they're down 17-14 by Will Howard was insane. Joe, he had a 37-yard completion to Cardell Tate. He had a 4-yard run. He had a 3-yard run, a 7-yard run. He had a 3-yard completion to Ibuka, and then he had a 10-yard run to get them a first down on 2nd and 3. Joe, I got to admit, I understand that they're getting beat up, but, man, Will Howard really performed well for them on Saturday in a very tough and very close battle.
Yeah, I got to definitely give credit to Howard with all the offensive line issues that they're having at the current moment. For him to still, despite getting pressured as much as he did and getting sacked, to play as well and to have those big plays, it's important for what to expect for the rest of this season. More importantly, second half, like you were talking about here, trust your playmakers. Know who's going to get you out of it. But their inability to run the football. When, again, this Nebraska defense got ran all over by Indiana, and now suddenly you can't get the ball going on the ground when you have two of the best the best running back duo in the country. Let me rephrase that. That is going to cause problems. This isn't one of those situations where we can talk about, and I feel like we're able to navigate problems for teams really well on the show of saying, this isn't working, here's a potential solution. When you're dealing with this, where you're down 2 tackles and you're moving guys around in different spots, I just don't know what you do to fix that. Do they just need to start throwing the ball more to avoid their run game stalling their offense? Is that what they need to do?
Joe, I mean, yeah. I mean, it's at least in this game, right? Like at least in this one. Because, again, they don't have – bro, you got Megatron Sr. and Megatron Jr. at wide receiver. I mean, Joe, they are so talented on the outside. It's insane. It purely and utterly insane. But I do agree with you, man. They couldn't run the football to save their life. So
that
again,
shouldn't happen. This is an LSU where they're dealing with running back injuries. They've got the best running back duo in the country.
Joe, I said that they had injuries or no injuries. I told you all season and in the offseason that they got a guard issue.
Well, but it's getting accentuated with the problems that they're dealing with at left tackle.
Joe,
Donovan Jackson might have to play tackle for them, who's their better guard of the two.
Joe, there were 3 runs, though, that, I mean, you're talking about him. There are 3 runs in that game that he gets penetration right into his inside, and I'm like, hey, buddy, I mean, like, okay. I mean, Juckins got hit and got up and, like, slammed the football because that was the 3rd time that he got hit at the line of scrimmage, and he's pissed. Joe, he's pissed, and I'm with him. So, I don't know. By the way, Jaden Daniels just completed a 65-yard touchdown in the air, Hail Mary touchdown.
Of course he did. No, just I mean, I don't know. There's no words to even put on that.
Dude's special, man. Dude's insane.
Absolutely.
Joe, this one wasn't even close, our next game, but we did talk about the Oregon social media team. I hope that you leave this in the clip because Oregon faced Illinois yesterday in an outright blowout. even though I'm mad at Oregon social media, okay, for clipping us when we said, and all week we said that this was going to be a domination. Actually, it was. Oregon dominates Illinois 38-9. Your thoughts?
Well, obviously, one of the things that we talked about in this preview, why we were so confident that Oregon was going to kick the crap out of them, is that their defensive line is so good and that Illinois did not have the O-line to protect Luke Altmaier and to run the ball. This is just another opportunity to remind us that this Oregon team, they got all the energy that they need at the right time. You don't want to be that team that peaks in week 3. Tennessee's a great example of that. Everybody was crowning them national champions, including us on this show. No. Okay, hold on. Let me rephrase. We were hyping them up quite a bit, though. We thought that they could be an SEC.
They had 800 yards of offense. What do you want me to do?
That's not the point. I'm trying to say here, though, is that there's plenty of teams that peak early and then fall off. Ranked team at home, see the opportunity to completely smother and dominate your opponent, get in and out, move on to the next game. This Oregon team, despite a first couple of weeks with some new faces, Evan Stewart comes in, Dylan Gabriel comes in. We're working out. We're figuring out what are all the issues. How can we fix this? What works best? They figured it out, it feels like. It feels like they know what they need to do to smoke everybody that they face off with. I'm in on this Oregon team. The more that I see performances like this against a good Illinois program, not saying they're great, but a good Illinois program that was rankable and competitive and a tough out for everybody that they played up until that point. This is a reputable, strong win. And again, I continue to be impressed by Oregon.
Joe, they dominated on the ground. Something that, if you and I are having a conversation about Oregon 3 or 4 weeks ago and they couldn't run the football, Joe, they lined up against a really tough Illinois front and ran it right at them and busted their ass. I mean, the turnovers, the just absolute will to just run over your opponent. Joe, you're right. They are leaning on teams. And to be real with you, it also goes in the sense of, Joe, I got to be real with you. Outside of Cam Ward, the second most reliable quarterback in the country is Dylan Gabriel. And it's not remotely close. Dylan Gabriel, 18 of 26, 291. He had 3 touchdowns, Joe, but I know he had the pick. Okay. Overthrow, whatever, timing bad, whatever. He went off too. So not only are they running the football and running it down a team's throat, Joe, I go into a game expecting Dylan Gabriel. I have confidence in him that he's going to make the right decisions, that he's going to make the right plays. Now, Joe, I look at them, and especially in this game defensively, Luke Altmaier was seeing ghosts out there like he was Sam Darnold, 4 years ago. 17 of 35, 161, and 2 touchdowns. 2 interceptions. I mean, they're all over the place. They're suffocating teams. That's what's happening here. And look, man, we just got done talking about Ohio State and the Megatrons that they have at receiver. Now that we're seeing this thing being opened up and the season's in there, Joe, this team can compete with anybody. And I think that you're right. I do think that we're starting to see an Oregon team hitting a different stride right now.
I would make this argument, Blake. I don't know if I can think of a more balanced team in the country right now. And we spent a lot of time in the preseason talking about who is the most balanced, but teams like Georgia and Ohio State, they're banged up on their O-lines. They're dealing with injuries at different positions. Oregon has stayed healthy, and they've got depth at a lot of spots. This Oregon team feels like they're the most balanced. You just talked about how the run game took over here. And then we watched against Ohio State.
29 yards. They're clapping people.
Ohio State, the passing game took over. That won them the football game. On defense, their D-line can step up and stop teams that are run-centric. Their secondary can make big plays against opposing quarterbacks that are of higher calibers. They might be, quite possibly, the most balanced team in the country at the current moment. That could change, and that probably will change. Other teams are going to catch up like Georgia that we've been hyping up a ton lately. But this Oregon team, I mean, I'm going to sound like a broken record. I keep getting more and more impressed by how they not only win, but just kick the shit out of everybody that they play.
Georgia of the West?
We said, but anyone who thinks we're Oregon haters, go find the Dan Lanning National Signing Day video that we did where the headline literally was, "Is this SEC West?" 1,000%.
Oh, I thought on Oregon social media they just clip anything that we say hateful. And by the way,
next preview, should we just say like a bunch of like really heinous, like really hot takey things that sound like we're hating on Oregon and see if they'll
I don't know, but here's the funny thing. You ready? Here's the funny thing. Because if you watch the hype video, I said that I think that Illinois might be able to run the ball a little bit. That there is something, Joe, that I do see about Oregon.
Yeah.
Lottery had 12 carries for 70 yards.
I mean, come on. I don't know if that's enough proof
Joe,
to like
7 yards. No, it's 7 yards a carry.
I know.
Okay, so again, if there's a team that can run the football, I do ask. I'm just asking questions, Joe. That's all I'm asking.
I know.
Okay, clip that shit next time. Tag us. Any thoughts on Illinois here, Joe? I mean, like,
they're out of the playoff picture. I don't think there's much to take. If I'm being honest, when we get games like this and teams are shifting out of the playoff picture, I move my focus to the team that won. Got to give credit to Brett Bielema, though, man. They're in a spot that I don't think anyone anticipated or expected, that they're at least in these conversations and they're rankable.
Fair. I do think that's fair. All right, let's move on here. Notre Dame takes down Navy, Joe, and a team that forced 6 turnovers yesterday was the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. I'll kick it over to your squad. Your thoughts on the game.
Now those 6 turnovers, before anyone jumps in the comments, a lot of them were unforced errors that Navy had because they were extremely just dysfunctional. They were having a ton of issues on offense. I need Notre Dame fans, and I'm glad that it sounds like you're going to agree with me with this take that I'm about to have. I need a lot of Notre Dame fans to please be realistic of the outcome of this game. Be prideful of it, but be realistic. That game is not as big of a resume booster as some would think it is, as some Notre Dame fans might want to paint it as one. It is not as good of a win as an in-conference victory for an SEC or a Big Ten team. However, I have echoed and said this a million times on this show since the NIU loss. Notre Dame can't leave doubt against any of their opponents. They need to blow past and dominate on both sides of the football against every single team that they play, because there are no more ranked matchups remaining. Leave the committee a situation where at the very least they can pull up the resume and say, you know what, they might not have played anyone tough in the final stretch of the season, but they dominated everybody that they went against. And they have 11 wins, no conference championship, and their one biggest win is against a Texas A&M team that finished 3rd or 4th or even 2nd in the conference. Notre Dame has a pretty good resume, and I think that this win is showing that they are worthy of being in this playoff picture.
I'm going to push back on one thing that you just said. You ready?
Okay.
The A&M win in week 1 is massive right now.
Yeah.
It's a massive chess piece. I get that it's week 1 and A&M is a completely different football team, but you can say that you went down there and won. I get.
See, I thought you were gonna flip that on me. I thought you were gonna say, Joe, that was in week 1. I'm stunned by that you're agreeing with me on this. I'm like blown away right now.
Well, hold on. Even if here's would be my opinion.
Okay.
A&M is far better than what they were in week 1. Okay?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the truth. If both teams lined up today, A&M would not only be favored, but Joe, you would probably think that they might, on a neutral site, that they're going to give you problems.
Yeah, I don't. Well, considering how close it was, and now that they know what they didn't run the ball the same way or even try to in week 1. They changed their approach.
I'm talking about right now in the sense of Ben Morrison's out. You're kind of banged up. Joe, the truth is that they're kind of banged up a little. Their left guard, Chase Basantis, is out, but then they replaced it with a freshman who just went off. Okay. Yeah. I mean, Joe, there just comes a point a little bit here where, I mean, that's such a massive piece. And that's what the committee's going to use. Not me necessarily, because I think me and you could take what our eyeballs see and say, hey, come on, let's be real about something here. And it would be a much tougher game for you going into this one. Yeah. Here's the thing for me for Notre Dame. I'm not going to take the 265 rushing yards, even though I think you need to continue to lean on your running game. Here's the truth, I think a little bit. I think you're trying not to be Brian Kelly, Notre Dame, and you're getting away from the principles of what wins football games. I think sometimes you wanted to prove that you've opened some things up and your offense has changed and you're trying to make Riley Leonard something that he's not. Run the football. Your defense is still good. Run the ball. Joe, what is every team that's the most consistent, whether we talk about Oregon, A&M, Georgia, when they kind of got back to it, Joe, teams that are playing really good defense and lining up and popping you in the mouth are winning. They're winning. And so that's the truth of what – screw what perception that you think that people have on you. You can line up and whip that ass up front.
That's the biggest thing for me.
Get back to who you are. Okay. Here's the biggest thing. Throw out everything defensively. Were you fundamentally sound?
Yes.
Check. On defense, did you force turnovers against a very tricky offense?
Some of them are unforced, but yes.
Yes. You get to a situation where, Joe, that's when you play one of these service academies. Are you a disciplined football team? And you were. And that's the thing, Joe. I mean, I don't know what else you want me to say. I mean, people thought I was really buying into the Navy thing that we talked about last. I mean, come on. We talked about this on Wednesday.
No one's able to like read through sarcasm in our.
They can't. Did you see our comments on the? Did you see the comments on the channel?
I did. Well, I brought it up. One of them was.
Go ahead.
One of them was really funny, and I think I brought it up last week, which was, how are you going to pick a Christ over America or something like that, which was hilarious.
That was funny. That was really funny. You knew the sarcasm. We talked about it on Wednesday. I mean, come on. I love how physically you dominated and you were at the line of scrimmage, Joe. I think that you took care of business. You're not going to get the praise for it. You don't need the praise. Just keep going to who you are. That's all I can say, man. Really, I mean, as much as I would want to, Joe, I think it's a good win. But here's the thing that I look at too. I thought Denbrock called a great game on third down, regardless of the opponent. Okay, he did some really good things on third down. But you got to go to Riley Leonard and say, "Hey, big dog, we're gonna bully. We're gonna try to bully some teams. That's the only chance we got. And you could throw the football around a little bit, but Joe, Jeremiah Love, dude."
Well, that's been the biggest thing that I keep coming back to. And they got away from a little bit against Georgia Tech, but then they realized, okay, if we can't get him going on the ground in between the tackles, we're going to make him a receiver. I said this on the BR stream Bleacher Report stream I did on Wednesday. In the preseason, it was talked about how they were going to use him as a slot receiver and a running back. And they were just going to move him all over the place because he really is one of the most uniquely gifted athletes in the country. There's NFL scouts that really think in a year when he declares that he could be and should be a first-round pick. Like, he is a very gifted athlete, and it feels like Notre Dame's not capitalizing on that. So you're bringing it up here. He had a fantastic game. He had so many big plays. They need to just keep giving this kid the football. Get him returning more kicks. Put him out wide. Put him in the slot. Put him in motion. And I think that Denbrock's starting to realize that, and he's starting to be more aggressive about it. But you're 100% right. That is their key to victory. It's not Riley Leonard. Riley Leonard's not the guy who wins and loses you football games. Jeremiah Love can be the guy that wins you games if you use him the correct way.
Impressive win.
Yeah.
I don't care because you're fundamentally sound.
That was a big thing we talked about in the preview, man.
Here's what's good. I want to tell you this. As much shit as you gave Marcus Freeman, okay, about NIU, in fairness, that hasn't really happened against Purdue and Navy. They have written that ship. So there are two games out there where you were like, he doesn't get them up for the big ones, Joe. He doesn't get up for the big ones.
No. But that wasn't what my whole argument was. My whole argument, Blake, was he doesn't get them up for the worst opponents on their schedule, and then they lose those games. That's what's the absurd nature of it. And I will give, and I will walk back slightly, that Marcus Freeman has proven me wrong with some of these matchups and kicking the crap out of everybody. That's what they need to keep doing. But at the same time, I'm not saying he's getting fired, but they got to accomplish something here. They got to win a playoff game. They can't just go out there and get their ass kicked.
I'm going to throw this at you.
Yeah.
Let's just say hypothetically, of the 8 teams that will get top 8 seeds, outside of you getting matched up against the Big 12 somehow, some way, whatever, I'm going to give you a little bit of a truth. You worry me more than any, like Notre Dame would worry me against any of those top 8, even 12 opponents. I'm just being real. I'm being 1,000% real. I do still think.
Let's pitch a couple of these teams: Indiana, Penn State.
The problem is with Indiana,
Texas.
Okay, in this kind of scenario, okay, they are blowing out conference opponents big time. Conference opponents. When you're playing Navy in week 9. It's a massive. You get what I'm saying here? You understand what I'm saying?
I do, and that was why I prefaced my lead in as there is a difference in resumes between what a team like Indiana and a team like Penn State and a team like Texas, that when they get an in-conference non-ranked win, that means more than the Navy win. But I do think that this Notre Dame team is better than they're going to appear because they're not playing anyone. They can't.
Now, I'm not saying that
good.
You won't get in, because here's the truth too. Notre Dame is a media darling, and everybody knows this. Don't play around with me on this. Okay, they're probably going to get in if they win out. However, if it's me and you talking, the truth's got to start coming out. Like, for example, Joe, in Tennessee. Like, let's just say Tennessee loses to Georgia, and it's the only loss that they have down the stretch, and we got to be in a situation where, because you have the team at number 12 has got to be a G5 opponent, which Boise State, congratulations, you won. And Notre Dame, like, how are those weighed? And so that's the thing that I look, anybody that's realistic as a Notre Dame fan knows I'm not trolling. You know what I'm telling you is 1,000% truth.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not cracked out enough to sit here and say that I think that Notre Dame would kick the crap out of Tennessee. Look at the way that they played this weekend. I'm not one of those Notre Dame fans that doesn't have realistic expectations, again, especially after the dud that they showed us in week 2. They have those types of games in them.
And Joe,
but I don't.
And now you're hurt. Like, as an example, if what we saw in the second half from Nico is real, okay, like, this is how my mind works.
But the problem is with like a team. Okay,
hold on. If it is real, as an example, okay, and they're able to throw the football on you and get up on you, and we see that they can run the football with Dylan Sampson, Joe, that's how my mind works. I'm like, yeah, man, I take Tennessee because, look, I have seen this occur. And if you got in a situation where you're having to go blow for blow, score for score on them, Joe, who are you going to trust? Do you trust Nico, or do you trust Riley Leonard to throw you into that one?
Well, but I don't know if I can. That's the problem, is that a lot of these teams that are in this outer bubble that are in the playoff conversation, they all have issues. They all have like major inconsistencies. Tennessee is Exhibit A.
Fair.
Where they, like, I can't answer that question. I got to be honest with you. I don't know which version.
Here's the truth. That's another team that's going to be on that bubble who we're going to talk about now. Alabama versus Missouri. Joe, look, I think if you did not watch the game and you box scored watch this one, you're like, okay, I mean, damn. Missouri got blanked, and, Alabama's back, baby. Here they go. They looked bad starting off in the first half.
First 25 minutes of this game, 4 drives, 63 yards, 3.2 yards per play, 4 failed third down tries.
And in the drive, that is field goal, 3 and out, punt, field goal.
They did not play good to start this game.
Did
they respond, and did they eventually bounce back and finish with 271 rushing yards and 7.2 yards per set? Jesus, mouthful here. 7.2 yards per. Were you about to say that's what she said? Yeah, settle down over there. to 7.2 yards per rush, sack adjusted for that. And their defense didn't allow a completion over 15 yards. So they really did dominate them. But the conversation that we had in the open and that needs to be had in reacting to this game, Blake, is that if Missouri wasn't so shit, and also if Missouri wasn't so banged up at the current moment,
there you go.
This game would have been a lot closer. Tennessee's an example of that. Both teams started slow. Both teams were feeling each other out. And then eventually, because Alabama let Tennessee hang around as long as they did, Tennessee's playmakers started to step up and they won the football game. I think that this team still shows signs of being under a first-year coach. They're still dealing with all the penalties. They're still playing sloppy. I'm not buying in on this Bama team as a playoff squad. They're going to lose another game, and I think that other game is going to be LSU.
Oh, don't stop. You got to pick Bama in 2 weeks.
Yeah, let's go. Roll Tide.
Justin Saints and Jan Miller. So Justin Saints, I mean, why are you just now finding ways to get him the football? Why? I mean, he was the talented running back that came in under Saban. Why? Now, I will say this. Milroe got pressure on him a lot in the first half. And here's what I think the truth was. You just kept leaning on Mizzou, and then Drew Pine kept giving you the football over and over and over again. So let me tell you just how I see Bama at the current moment. I think that the win is big, and you did some really good things in the second half. You adjusted. You took care of business. There also is a part of me that says, Joe, there was a time that Milroe got sacked. Bro, Proctor got destroyed by this Missouri D-line. Darren Booker had an off day. I mean, and so I get to a point where, dude, I see the talent. I can see the talent. There also comes a part where I'm like, man, you also kind of got bullied on that. You know, like, I mean, yeah. And I think that Milroe, for what it's worth, Joe, I don't think he's healthy. I think this bye week is the best thing for Alabama, to be honest, so that they can
Very true.
Take 2 weeks. I mean, it's a big deal for them. Who is the Bama team? What is this Bama team going to be post-bye week? Who are you? Who are you really? What's your culture starting to form to be? Because if your culture is starting to form to be something special and who you can be, this will be the week that you finally show it. Now, I mean, they ran the football effectively. Milroe had 11 carries, 50 yards, a touchdown. I mean, you're not really – I mean, okay. Haynes, 879, 1. Joe, you got to get back to what wins you football games. And here's what I'd say, too. I don't know if – and Bama, this is the big Bama. All right, can we talk about the biggest Alabama complaint right now and what it is?
Yeah.
Kalen DeBoer doesn't really know what it's like to run the ball in the SEC. And can I be real with you?
Yeah.
In a way, they're not wrong. You got to run the ball to win this league. You got to run the ball to win. Hold on one second. You got to run the ball to win the Big Ten. Joe, what are the two teams that win that conference historically? What do they all have in common offensively?
They all run the ball effectively.
They all run the ball effectively. You got to play a little bit of smash mouth here.
I do agree with that aspect of this, and that's like the one, I think, key takeaway that you have. Obviously, again, like Drew Pine, having watched him at Notre Dame, the guy, great for him that he keeps getting these opportunities, and I'm sure you got paid to be the backup here for this team. Not good enough to be a starting quarterback, not really good enough player to step in, and he made some grave mistakes that completely took Missouri out of the game. This Missouri team is going to be fine in the future, just to throw that out there. But you're right. It felt like the first few weeks of the season, we were starting to see a development of the running attack and a reliance and a willingness to use their running backs. And then they got away from it. These bad games that they were playing, they got away from everything. It felt like they were pressing, that they were trying to do too many different things. It felt like, I forget where I was reading this. It might have been in an athletic article where they perfectly depicted this, where it felt like for a stretch of time that Kalen DeBoer was like really trying to make Jalen Milroe into Michael Penix and like really make him stretch the field and really attack downfield. And him having that ability and knowing that Jalen Milroe can do that, it's great. But that's not his bread and butter. You know, the way that he's going to be a better player and a more confident player is if he can lean on his teammates. If it's all Jalen Milroe, he's going to get banged up like people keep speculating and like you're speculating. You're not the only other person that I've heard say that. And on top of this, like he's going to make mistakes. It's just like with Garrett Nussmeier. When you, for some reason, call plays with the desire of like, this guy is going to win us the football game and we trust him, there are not many dudes who can like really, really do that. Like at all. It's just in the history of college football. But I agree with you, man. Getting Justice Haynes going more, like those big, hard runs. And like Richard Young got some carries in this game too and made some plays. They got to keep running the football. It seems to completely change their identity.
It does. They got to continue to lean on it. And if they do, I think we're going to find out who they really are in this season. We're going to find out really quickly.
Yeah.
Joe, there's a couple of teams I want to hit on here. Penn State, with Drew Aller not going in the second half, beats Wisconsin. What were some of your thoughts on Penn State and getting a good win here?
Penn State's another team that's like really proven me wrong, and another team that feels like they are hitting their stride. This is going to be another one where people just kind of glance the box score and it's like, oh, immediately, they played Wisconsin close. But Drew Aller goes down. Bo Prabula, man, I'm a big Bo Prabula fan who stepped in at quarterback here. He is exactly what Andy Kotelnicki goes for in a quarterback play style. He's very athletic. He's very quick. He can throw on the run, and he's a nice facet to the run game. I think Aller coming back, and they had already worked Bo Prabula into this game or into games previously in some sub packages. I'd love for that kid to get on the field more. And that was one of the things that I did a couple of appearances on some Penn State shows. And I said, I'd love to see what Bo Prabula can do in this offense. I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't end up being a catalyst at times in certain drives. This is another one of those unique circumstances for having two quarterbacks, and one of them's a really good athlete, and one of them's the big-armed pocket presence guy. Bring in Prabula, let him stress defenses, let them confuse defenses. Kotelnicki is one of the best in the country at doing that. And secondly, this defense gets better every single week. Just like we talked about with Oregon, they are tough as shit. Abdul Carter is a dude. He could be the first overall pick or at least a top 10 pick, depending on who's picking. If it's a team that doesn't need a quarterback and they don't go for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, they might be picking this kid because he's that good. And overall, man, they force opposing teams into some serious issues to the point where they only allowed 217 passing yards, 5.2 yards per attempt, 87 rushing yards, and 3 yards per carry. They tackle, they come downhill, and they play sound to their assignments. This Penn State team, man, they might have a real shot at being Ohio State.
Were you going to leave me any take, or are you just going to do the whole thing? I mean,
I'm just juiced up by this game. I'm sorry.
Well, first off, pause. I mean, I'm like, okay, well, he's going to stop here. I get to talk about the run game, how it was really effective. They ran for 173 yards against a really physical Luke Fickell football team. But thanks. I mean, thanks for leaving me something, Joe.
I'm sorry.
It's like when you have older brothers and they get to get food first, you know what I mean? And you're like, hey, bro, you got to leave me some. Now, you could see that, I kind of just pushed my brother out of the way. I mean,
Let me cook, man. I was cooking. You were being a good teammate. You passed me the ball, and I drained the 3. That's all that matters.
Okay, Ray Allen, calm down. Indiana, Joe, improves to 8-0 on the season. We talked about Indiana this week, and what's interesting about them when we looked at them, our question was about Taven Jackson. Well, ain't a question no more.
I think with Taven Jackson, and he didn't have like a crazy good game, but I thought that like he stepped in and he was able to play good enough to help this Indiana team get the win. That's what matters. I said this in the preview. I wasn't worried. I didn't think that there was going to be any issues. Indiana continues to completely dominate their opponents. And this was another example of that. I like this Indiana squad, man. I think that they legitimately could be a playoff team. I don't think that they're good enough to beat Ohio State, but their remaining schedule opens the door for it. And this Washington game feels like that was the case.
I mean, look, they just they showed offensively that, hey, without Curtis Rourke, and we're throwing it all over the place, we're making explosive plays through the air, we also can line up and run it right at you and dominate you and then turn over Will Rogers twice and make his life outright confusion every single snap. I felt like Will Rogers was like seeing ghosts out there. Sam Darnold, that's the second time I've referenced that today. But that's just the truth. I mean, they just showed that they can beat you in two ways. I mean, that okay, you want to be physical? You think that we can't line up and bop you in the mouth? Watch this shit. Yo, watch this shit. We're going to line up and run it right at you, and we're going to punch you in the face over and over and over again with a quarterback going into his first start. He made it was a bad interception, okay. Yep. So he's a first-time starter, and we can give everybody in the country, like redos and mulligans. But Taven Jackson throws a pick. Oh, well, you see that. Yeah, I saw people on social media. Oh, yeah, they're a little bit vulnerable. And I'm like, he's a freshman that threw a pick. Did you not just watch Ohio State versus Nebraska with another one? And it's in your own conference. What are you talking about?
Ellison and Lawton, though. Yeah, that rushing attack, man, it's freaking good. You hit the nail on the head there. Is that if there is something wrong, they can lean on the run game. And their offensive line, final thought on this, their offensive line does not get enough love. I think I said this before. I want to watch that offensive line to see if there's any NFL dudes on it, just from a draft perspective. But that might be one of the best offensive lines in the country.
Here's the thing, too. And this is what Jackson will come to learn. If you have 3 yards, that dude is open. This is not high school, right? Like, this is not like, if you have a yard, this dude is open. And when we talk about on this show that their receivers have started to get massive separation, Joe, we were talking about massive separation about guys like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson a couple of years ago, and we were like, dude, they're getting 2 yards worth of cushion on them. They're beating the dog. And I'm like, yeah, like, that's not normal. Anyway, no, it's not. It's not at all. Anyway, but Indiana. Joe, last team that we got to hit here, we got labeled as the Colorado haters last week, but it is what it is. Colorado, stand up. Another really good win for Dion. They are bowl eligible, Joe. The Colorado Buffaloes are bowl eligible.
Colorado's another team, and I made this the title of the last video. There are plenty of listeners that like listen to us and like the show. We're agreeing with us and like, you guys are right. These are great points to talk about Colorado. And then there's just like this. Some of the Colorado fans hate us, even though we're praising them. I think there's a good chunk of Colorado fans that see our show, and when we were critical for a brief period of time, they think that we're haters. Opinions can change, guys. And
when you're in a one-score game with North Dakota State.
Yeah. Well, no, but more importantly, like last year was what we were going off of, and some of the issues that they showed in the first couple of weeks. We are a show that we will not just dig into our takes. We will change our opinions when teams show us that they're improving. And that's exactly what Colorado's doing. And that's why I think a lot of people like our show, because we're willing to do that. But Colorado right now is getting better in areas where they are able to win in the Big 12. They got all over Cincinnati. Their D-line played great. And Augustive, I mispronounced his name wrong last week, and I apologize for that. I still really like that Augustive kid. When he was going to Arkansas and I watched his highlights, he really impressed me. I'm so glad that they're giving him more carries. I really do think that could be a game changer for them offensively and opening things up. And I hope the last part of this, Blake, I hope that Travis Hunter can continue to stay on the field, and that the injury that he suffered a couple of weeks ago was something minute, and that he recovers and is fine for the rest of the year, because when he plays, it's much must watch every time.
I also felt like that Travis Hunter didn't like our conversation last week about Heisman contenders, and us just asking the question in reference to, not that he was out. I mean, he was still in both of our Heisman Trophy watch.
Yeah, we started arguing about two specific guys.
He had 9 catches, 150 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And let me ask you this question. It's a great win against Cincinnati. I do think that you lit up at the end of the game, though, Joe. I mean, look, you got to put teams away in college football. I know that you want to take some guys out, but you let Cincinnati get 9 points in the fourth quarter. You could have had another dominating win. Look, listen, if Shedeur Sanders didn't have the last name Sanders, would we talk about him in that Heisman conversation?
It's a good point, because like right now he's one of the leading people for the first overall pick conversation. And it does beg the question of like, why isn't he brought up more? And that sometimes it comes with like, oh, quarterbacks need to have X amount of wins. Well, Colorado's winning right now. Him and Cam Ward have been the two best quarterbacks in the country. Like, I don't think anyone else has put together enough consistent performances, or as many consistent performances as those two guys, and also done the most for their teams to win and score points and to be competitive and to be dominant. So it's a good point. I'm surprised that more people, and Deion Sanders said this after the game. He said that, like, why isn't Shedeur being brought up as well? I forget what the exact quote was, but he's justified in bringing that up.
Very true. Sorry. Billy Lucci was coming after me. I had to kind of.
Oh, no.
Anyway, but I agree. All right. We will see y'all again.
We have some super chats. We should probably get them really quick.
Yeah. Sorry. I didn't.
A bunch of them.
I turned them off. Or turned my chat off. Douglas says, is Wisconsin a trap game for Oregon?
I don't think so. I think Oregon's going to kill them. I think that Wisconsin's a step down from Illinois. I don't think it's a trap game. I don't know about you, Blake, but I don't feel like that one is.
It's not a trap game.
No.
Where's that game at?
It's a good question, actually. I don't know off the top of my head. Let's look.
Yeah, let's look before
it's at Wisconsin.
There comes the shoe. Hey, man, we got to go to the mid. That's why I asked. We got to go out to the Midwest. I mean, look, man, Penn State came in there and took care of business with a backup quarterback. I trust Dylan Gabriel, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Taylor says, why do y'all think LSU struggles so much in the run game? Some say predictable play calling, but I don't know. Les was the most predictable plays of all time, but his teams always ran the football well. Well, I think two things, or one thing for sure. Okay, one thing that is for sure is that it's a different style, because you're running it so much and you're just running it right at them over and over and over and over and over and over again. But Joe, I mean, I remember when LSU ran 36 straight toss dives. Like, I mean, they ran the ball just boom, 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 boom. That's what LSU football was built off of. This is different because you're throwing a bomb on first down. You're trying to run it on second down. And if you don't get a couple of yards, okay, you get maybe 3 or 4 yards in the running game, right? Not a bad run. 4-yard run's not bad, but it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and it's not a manageable third down situation for Garrett Nussmeier. So I do think play calling lives off of that. But the play calling does have a lot of effect to it. That's how I would characterize it.
Yeah.
Elks, Joe, was
Honda McCord?
Oh, McCord stats. Howard would never, bro.
I don't know. I didn't catch that game. Did they play this week?
Kyle McCord threw 5 picks, dude.
No, he didn't. You're making that up.
No,
I refuse to admit that I'm wrong to Alex. I absolutely refuse to admit that I'm wrong. I'll never admit it. So his next question though that he had was that targeting on
Reese? I say no. So, did you see Ryan Day go ballistic on the sidelines?
I did. Yes.
Okay, here's the truth. By the letter of the law, I mean, by the letter of the law, yes.
For a little context here, I was on the sideline of a football game, and I was trying to watch this on my phone. I had a quad box on my phone, so I was trying to keep up with it. So I didn't catch this specific targeting play.
By the letter of the law, it's targeting. Should it have been targeting? No. Ryan Day lost his ever-living mind, and he should have. I mean, Joe, come on, man. I mean, I didn't see. I'm going to be just being honest. I didn't see the. Okay, Ducks for Life with a $5 super chat says, "Can we line up and compete with any team in the nation?" Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Appreciate that super chat. I mean, that was like the big talking point for that recap of that game is that like they continue to like really. I didn't know in the first couple of weeks. They've answered that question for me. They 100% can.
I would like to see what they would look like against a team that, look, Ohio State, I mean, Joe, now we're talking about their offensive line being beat up and struggles and they can't run the football. I mean, but yeah. I mean, no team is flawless right now, in my opinion. I think every team can be beat, but I do think Oregon's the one that you would fear the most in a lot of those situations. All right. We'll see y'all again on Monday. Y'all have a good night. Peace out.